Hey guys, welcome to the first lesson of Chapter 1. It is a place value and patterns. Our essential question for this lesson is how can you describe the relationship between two place value positions? I want you to put your star beside our essential question because you should, after this lesson, be able to answer that question. So with this lesson, it's an investigate lesson. So with you being at home, you're not going to have access to these manipulatives, so you can draw them, or they're just there for that representation. You don't have to have it in order to do this lesson. So it says you can use base 10 blocks to understand the relationships among place value positions. Use a large cube for 1,000. So here's your large cube for 1,000. A flat for 100. A long for 10, and a small cube for 1. Now, when I'm going through these lessons online and in these videos, I want you, whatever I'm writing down, I want you to write down too, unless I say you don't have to write it down. But it's really good when you're note taking to go ahead and copy down or jot down whatever not just me, whatever the teacher is writing, you should write it down too. It's good note taking skills. All right, so the next section says complete the comparisons below to describe the relationship from one place value position to the next place value position. So before we go and fill in the blanks, let's actually look at these. So if I'm going from 1 to 10, what's that relationship look like? Well, I know that if I multiply 1 times 10, I'm going to get 10. So I'm going to say times 10. If I jump from this to this, it's times 10. What about if I jump from 10 to 100? It would also be times 10. What about if I go from 100 to 1,000? It would be times 10. Now let's look at if we go from a large cube to a flat. What are we doing? Well, a flat would be 1/10 of what the cube is. So it would be like dividing by 10, or we could say it's 1/10 the size of the large cube, because you would need 10 flats in order to get one large cube. And the same thing with a long to a flat. The long is 1/10 the size of the flat. And the same thing with the small cube. It is 1/10 of that. Okay, so now that we've looked at it, we've kind of compared them, let's go down to the next section. Look at the long, so we're going to look back up here at the long, and compare it to the small cube. The long cube is how many times as much as the small cubes? Well, we've talked about that. How many times more? It's 10 times as much as the small cube. Now look at the flat and compare it to the long. We did that. The flat is how many times greater? 10 times greater. Now look at the large cube and compare it to the flat. The large cube is 10 times greater. Now, section B says look at the flat and compare it to the large cube. So look at the flat. So we're comparing the flat to the large cube. So we're not going to it, we're coming from it. So it would be the flat is 1/10 of the large cube because it's a smaller size. You're not going to multiply to get a smaller size. You're going to be dividing it. So it's taking it away. It's 1/10 of it. Now look at the long compared to the flat. The long is, that's right, 1/10 of the flat. And look at the small cube and compare it to the long. The small cube is 1/10 of the long. All right, now let's go to the next page and draw conclusions. And I know when y'all see this, you're like, oh my God, I don't want to write anything about math, because writing, first of all, takes some thought. And when you think about math, sometimes it's harder to get those thoughts in the way you want them to be. So, but I will help you through it, and it's basically what we just talked about. So it just says, describe the pattern you see when you move from a lesser place value position to a greater place value position. So if I look back, because it's always good to look back at your notes, when we go from a smaller place to a bigger place, what are we doing each time? That's right. It's going to be 10 times more. You're going to be multiplying that smaller number by 10 to get your next number. So we can say, as I move from a lesser position, sorry, my dogs are in the background, to the next greater, the pattern is going to be 10 times more. Now, it says, describe the pattern you see when you move from a greater position to the next lesser place value position. And we talked about that too. Let's go back and look at our notes. Remember, we said if we go from 1 to the next lowest position, it's going to be 1/10. That next lowest one is going to be 1/10 less. So, as I move from a greater position to the next lesser position, the pattern is going to be 1/10 less. 1/10 of the next position. 1/10. Now, let's look at make connections. You can use your understanding of place value patterns and a place value chart to write numbers that are 10 times as much as or 1/10 of any given number. Okay, so we know that if we're starting at if our hundreds, there's 300, how many tens is there going to be? And how many 1000s is there going to be? So, what is 10 times as much as 300? So if we go up one position, you're multiplying it by 10. So 300 times 10 would be 3,000. Basically, all you're doing is adding that 0 to that next position. Now, if you're going from hundreds to tens, remember that's 1/10 of. What is 1/10 of 300? Take away one of your zeros. What is it going to be? That's right, 30. Okay, now we're going to do that last one. On that page, it says use the steps below to complete the table. Write the given number in the place value chart. So you have 10 times as much as. So what is 10 times as much as 10? That one should be an easy one. That's 100. Now, what is 1/10 of 10? Let's take 10 divided by 10 would give us 1. Now, what is 70? It's 10 times as much as 70. We'd add our 0. We would have 700. Now, 1/10 of 70. Take a 0 away, and you're going to have 7. Keep going. 9,000. What is 10 times as much as 9,000? Add your 0 to it. It would be 90,000. And then what is 1/10 of 9,000? Take that 0 away. You would have 900. All right. Hopefully y'all got it. We're going to do 2 of these together, and that way you can kind of still have a couple more examples of how to do this, and then the rest of it I want you to do on your own. Okay, these back ones I'm not super concerned about you doing, but as long as you get these, I'll be happy with that. All right, so 500 is 10 times as much as what number? So they're not wanting you to multiply 10 times 500. They're trying to figure out what is 10 times, 500 is 10 times as much as what number? So it's kind of like you're doing it backwards. So I would say, let's take away one of the zeros, and that would be 50. Now let's see if that sentence makes sense. 500 is 10 times as much as 50. So is 10 times as much as 50 500? If it's true, then we got it right. Always go back and reread that sentence to make sure it really does make sense. All right, and then 20,000 is 1/10 of what number? So I would do the same thing. This time it's kind of like the last one, kind of doing the opposite. So I need to figure out what is what. This is already divided down, so I'm going to add a 0, and it's going to be 20,000. Or sorry, 200,000. All right, now let's see if that makes sense. 1/10 of 200,000 is 20,000. If that's true, then you're good to go. The way they word it is like they're doing the opposite. I don't really like that very much because it's like it's trying to confuse you. So you really have to think about what it's actually asking you, and then reread the statement to make sure it makes sense. So you for sure, I want y'all to do, circle them with me. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Okay? Thank you. Have fun. Do your best. And I will talk to you later.